one pill of ecstasy, that's damaging. And it's damaging from that small dose.
One glass of wine's damaging. They actually say any level of alcohol is damaging for you.
Hi.
How are you doing? Cool. I have used drugs before. I think a lot of young people have as part of, experimenting, transitioning. I just really got interested in why it's so stigmatized. Drug use, and also people who not only use drugs, but people who have problems with drugs.
I would agree with that in terms of the humanist sort of thing. I've worked, I don't know, I guess in the clubbing industry, within the warehouse sort of scene for a long time. And so I've seen people of all walks of life consume drugs. I have tried drugs in the past as well. I think it's important to test pills because at the end of the day, people are going to do it whether we like it or not. And so if there's a way that we can sort of even educate them about what's inside the things that they're taking, that can actually deter people from taking it.
My experience with drugs, unfortunately, has been to see a close family member really ravaged by that, and how addiction can really impact other people in really profound ways.
I've lived around people who've done drugs recreationally, people who've been addicted to drugs, and I've seen how drugs can really destroy people's lives. If
we had a kind of a different sort of public health issue, we would respond to it appropriately. We wouldn't condemn and judge people for if they're being affected by it. So I think that's what pill testing is at the end of the day. It's a health response to a reality.
Australian ecstasy pills rank one of the highest in the world for dangerous ingredients. So this year, 2018, they conducted the first pill testing in Australia at Groove in the Moo Festival, and they found 2 samples had N-ethylpentalone within them. It's a clunky word, but I got it out. And that is lethal. It can actually kill you. And I think that in itself even demonstrates the importance of pill testing.
One thing to consider is that it takes up to a week of lab testing to show that a drug is 100% free of lethal toxins, which means that pill testing on site will never be 100% safe. They run it against a database of different drugs they have on site they've already tested. And there are lots of new drugs hitting the market. In Melbourne, there's a new drug, M-bomb or something, that killed a few people. And they wouldn't be able to test for that because it's based on a database they already have, and there's a 20% margin of error, which means that if you test a pill, there's a 20% chance that that's lethal and that person dies.
For drugs that we can't test, we know that there's something there. It's not that we don't know what's in the drug or that we just miss it and then we hand someone back a dangerous drug and go, we don't know what it is. We identify a spectra for something that's unknown. And then we go, okay, we don't know what's in your drug when we go to give the results to the person or the individual. So we're telling you, we don't know what's in your drug, which should really concern someone taking the drug.
As someone who was in the tent on the day of the trial, we had an infrared spectroscopy machine, and it told you not only what was in the drug, and if it was an unknown chemical, it would flag unknown chemical, but it would give you scores for the dosage.
So what's the margin of error for that?
Well, probably 20%, as you said. I'm not saying that the technology is perfect.
Nothing's perfect.
But it's better than nothing.
But the issue then comes with liability, right? So if the government then says, this is why the Netherlands has moved off to off-site pill testing, where they have certain facilities where you can go to.
Fixed sites.
Yeah, fixed sites where we test it. And the reason for that is because on-site testing, if you're at a big concert, and this goes mainstream, and you've got people bringing drugs into concerts, you're going to have to be doing those tests within a short period of time.
They do that in Austria. So they have a service, the biggest pill testing service in Austria, called Check It. They actually have a separate room where they get everyone to come in who wants their drugs tested. The test itself takes 5 minutes. So they send the samples straight away to a nearby facility, which is a fixed site, which has lab-grade equipment, which has the infrared spectroscopy machine. This machine then tests all those samples, and the samples are all coded with the person who's brought them to the tester. And those samples are tested within minutes, and then they're taken immediately back to the live event, where they're posted on a board.
So that's within 5 minutes?
That's all within about 15 minutes, because it only takes minutes to test, and then minutes to take them back.
You have on-site pill testing. The government supports that and backs that and signs into law. This is now a government agency, pill testing on site, okay? You have them testing pills. You got 20% margin of error. They say to someone, your pill, maybe they tell the margin of error, maybe not, okay? They give someone the pill back and that person then dies, okay?
Isn't the margin of error so much greater now because we don't know what's in it and people have died?
Exactly.
The margin of error is massive.
Wait, I'm talking about legal issues. Legal issue is you hand it back, you say, this is relatively good or bad, or maybe...
We never say that.
What's done?
We never tell people that a drug is safe to use, all right? So on the day of the test, of the trial, if they had a test and it came back as, something toxic like PMA and ethylpentylone, we never say, oh, this drug is dangerous, you shouldn't use it. If it comes back as MDMA, we don't say this drug is relatively safe, you should use it. We never tell them what to do. All we're doing is giving them as much information as they can so they can then make that decision. And really, to put it bluntly, that's where the liability stops for us. Like, we tell them all the info that we have, and then they have to make that decision.
One of my concerns, and I think it's something we need to acknowledge, is that people may well feel that if they are able to have their drug tested and they're able to get a known concentration and check that it's free of contaminants, these people may choose to take a drug that they otherwise would not have. And I guess what really brings me there is I've seen a close family member fall into dependency with ice. He's a completely different person. It seems like a lot of the person that I know is gone in a way, and it's extremely sad to see them become almost like a shell of the person that they once were. And I know ice isn't necessarily something we consider a party drug, but at the Groove in the Mood Festival, we saw people take ketamine to get tested, and we saw that people thought they had cocaine that was getting tested. So we know that people are utilising these services to test for these drugs. And if we are in any way enabling that by implementing this service, that's a risk that I think we need to, acknowledge and discuss and work out how we minimise.
You're absolutely right. There is that subset of people who have these drugs, and yeah, there are propensities for addiction there.
There was also a survey done, the 2018 Global Drug Survey. They found that 20% of the people that got their pills tested actually changed the way that they consume drugs. So it is a way of educating people, which might make them not take things in future or throw out what they've had once they've had it tested.
There was a batch of pills that was circulating around several Northern European countries, including the UK and the Netherlands. When they were tested in the Netherlands and came back as containing PMA, which, as we know, is this really harmful chemical, the Netherlands pill testing service was able to actually broadcast not only warnings within live music events, but televised warnings. They had widespread campaign, be aware of this particular batch of pills. In the UK, they were only able to post the warning about it on their Facebook page that day because they didn't have funding and resourcing to be able to, create a widespread warning campaign. And 4 people died in the UK from ingesting the same batch of pills, whereas no one died in the Netherlands from it.
You're still expecting people in society to pay for someone else's choices.
We do that anyway. We do that anyway.
The issue is
Why don't we talk about the exact numbers? How much did it cost us at Groove in the Mill? It cost us $34,000, right? If you look at $34,000, how many people did we stop taking N-methylpentylone? 2? Yeah. Okay, so you're telling me $34,000. If you look at what we pay in health, those 2 individuals that potentially took a lethal dose, by far and away that was cost effective.
See, I think fear-mongering is a good thing in the sense that fear-mongering prevents, if you create a culture of, drugs are really bad, don't do it, people are inclined to be more scared of it, right? It creates a culture and a stigma of negativity around drugs, and it prevents people from ever trying to engage with it.
I think when people are afraid, especially when around things like drug dogs, they're more likely to actually ingest everything that they have, which can lead to overdose as well. I do understand the fact that, pills or ecstasy, that it's illegal, but if we can put we have stipulations around responsible service of alcohol, and we have marshals and their pure job is to make sure that people aren't getting too cooked on a night out, surely we can have the same sort of understanding with pills, and we can test them and we can inform people of the dangers.
I'd be inclined to support off-site pill testing, anonymous off-site pill testing, not on-site pill testing, because that's really inaccurate. with a no tolerance policy outside of that. Because I think we should be focusing on drug users as victims of drugs, not as criminals, and we should be criminalising those who deal with it, of course. And that way you can still have what I think is good negative stigma and fear-mongering around drugs, but also have those people that come to these amnesty sites, have all their health issues sorted, or then we target the drug dealers and get rid of them. So I think that's the slight change in my opinion. The small concession I shall make.
But even then though, just sorry not to cut, but even with drug dealers though, right? It's like, again, it's like the big fish and the little fish. We shouldn't be going for the people that are just out on the street selling like a little bit, because they're not the problem, it's the big dogs. They're a part of it, I know.
Unfortunately, I think the way that particularly drugs that are easy to manufacture, such as ice, part of the problem is that homegrown chemists are able to make this stuff themselves and sell it straight to the street, and that's part of why it's so problematic. There doesn't have to be a huge chain.
Heck, I know someone who grows marijuana, right? Like,
No one.
And so sometimes the small fish is like where it stops.
Yeah, okay.
you know.
Before I was a bit reluctant about hard drugs, but since doing a lot of research about pill testing, I've understood that there's a lot of benefit in testing everything, not just recreational drugs, because we can educate everybody through this sort of information. Yeah, so that's probably what's changed with me.
When I first heard of pill testing, I was like, that sounds bad.
Yeah.
But the more I looked into it and the more I thought about it, the more it seems that it's something we should implement.
Guys.
Thank
Great
you.
talking.
Yeah.